Hello and welcome to another Source Gaming discussion. I'm your host NantenJex and joining me today is PushDistIn.
Yo!
And today we have a very special video. This one is actually Patreon requested by our Patreon BearRimshot, who requested a series of top 10s related to Super Smash Bros. And discussions following them. And this is the first of these. We're going to be talking about the top 10 villains in Super Smash Bros. Or that we want to see. So there will have been a video already released that will be like an SG Choice top 10 where we've listed out what our 10 choices are. But we wanted to follow up with a discussion between me and Push just to go over the choices, whether we were surprised that those got voted so high, like whether we think they're actually possible. Just generally discussing it, because the vote was between all the members of Source Gaming. So, and everyone has varying opinions. So we're just going to tackle this in order, going from number 10 to number 1. You'll know the order already if you watched the other video, which I'm hoping you have done. But if you haven't, then be surprised. So, starting off with number 10, we have a Legend of Zelda villain that a lot of people want. He's really popular. And this is Skull Kid / Majora's Mask, because it's debated whether Skull Kid is actually a villain or not. But Majora certainly is.
Yes.
So
yeah, Skull Kid is kind of like the unwilling victim.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways.
Yeah. So he's really popular. He's already in Smash 4 as a assist trophy, where he uses his powers to make the whole map have some weird effect, like either flipped upside down or reversed, or he messes with everyone. He's one of those assists that doesn't necessarily benefit you when you get him.
He's a lot like those Pokemon that were on the Brawl stage.
Palkia from... what's the stage called? Spear Pillar. That's it.
There you go.
Yeah, he basically takes Palkia's ability from that level. And I think in Smash, the only game... Skull Kid has been in a few games. He's been in Ocarina of Time, he's been in Twilight Princess, he's been in Hyrule Warriors, and he's been in Majora's Mask, obviously. But Majora has only been in Majora's Mask and Hyrule Warriors. And I guess the mask cameoed in A Link Between Worlds, but it was just on the wall, so it doesn't really count.
Yeah.
So the amount of stuff that he could do, I think, would have to vary between actual magic Majora power and then general stuff that Skull Kids can do.
I would say that a lot of his power would come from just being able to have that evil power of the mask. Skull Kid himself, he likes to play tricks on people, so I guess you could have some, like you can have like the neutrals or like the jabs side. I'm sorry, it's really late here. You could have like the neutral game kind of be focused around the Skull Kid, whereas the specials are focused on Majora.
Yeah, I thought of that as it's like a logical way of doing it, because the standard specials are usually physical attacks with a bit of magic thrown in, so he could have a bit of dark magic around his feet or something. I think the only things that Skull Kids themselves actually do is, in Twilight Princess they have the puppets, but they also have like a blowgun in Ocarina of Time where they shoot like needles at Link.
They also play the flute.
Yeah, he can also play the flute. And although I don't know what you do for a move at that, it'd probably be more of a taunt.
Yeah.
So what do you think the chances are of, like, he's obviously number 10 on our list, so he's excluding, the ones who didn't even make it. He's the lowest priority on there. But personally, what do you think the chances are of him getting in?
Not very high. I really like Skull Kid. Majora's Mask is my favorite Zelda game, but I think the series has kind of moved on. Unless there's a direct sequel or some sort of story that involves Majora's Mask again, then I don't really see the character becoming a full playable character in Smash.
Do you think he'll stay as an assist trophy, or do you think there's a possibility he'll get removed as well?
I think there is a possibility he'll get removed. I think a big reason why he was included as assist trophy was because of Majora's Mask being re-released on the 3DS, and I think I think he is a little bit popular with Smash fans.
Like, I was thinking it was more popularity, mainly because you have Girahim because Skyward Sword was the latest game, but then the other two are Midna and Tingle as well. Tingle, Midna, and Skull Kid, who are arguably like three of the most popular non-main Zelda characters.
again, Midna is from Twilight Princess, which was receiving an HD remake as well.
I don't know if the HD remake would have been planned, though, back when they were doing this. I don't know. I mean, Wind Waker HD had a development cycle of, like, less than a year. I wouldn't be surprised if Twilight Princess HD also had a very short development cycle.
That's true.
Like, I feel like it's a popularity thing, personally. But I guess we can't know for sure.
Yeah.
So, the next character on this list is a villain from the Metroid series, but not the one that I think everyone is suddenly thinking of. This one is another one that might have gone past their time, but also appeared as an assist trophy in Smash 4, as presumably for popularity because they hadn't had a game in this series for a while, and that is Dark Samus. Samus's not alter ego, but doppelganger from Metroid Prime series, debuting in at the very end of Metroid Prime 1 and being finished off in Metroid Prime 3. So Dark Samus is a weird one. I remember having a debate on the character corner for Metroid for Dark Samus that a problem with her is that her silhouette is pretty much identical to Samus's, which might make designing a completely unique moveset for her to be like
a little complicated.
Yeah, because it's certainly possible. Her assist trophy shows that she has lots of different moves and that available, but the problem is that because she looks so similar, players might get confused. They might see Dark Samus and not realise and think it's actual Samus. And then when Dark Samus just does something or acts completely different, it throws the player off. That was what I remember the debate me and Liquid had in the character corner. Whether or not that is an issue or whether you can have two characters. Because arguably Mario and Luigi are different as well, but they have a lot of similar moves. They play quite similarly, mainly because Luigi started off as a clone of Mario.
Yeah. I think, like, one thing I do want to touch upon before I forget is that the reason that, like, Majora, Skull Kid, and Dark Samus might have been chosen as assist trophies is probably because Sakurai probably wanted to fluff out, to create more content for those series. So, you know, those characters, those series, Legend of Zelda and Metroid, they didn't really get new characters. But instead, they got a lot of new stages, and they got a lot of new items and assist trophies.
That's true. So Metroid got like what, Dark Samus, Mother Brain, and the Metroid returning.
Yep. So like series representation is just not limited to characters. So I think Sakurai is looking at those other things as well when deciding assist trophies. Of course, the popularity played a role in them getting chosen among the Metroid characters or among the Zelda characters.
That's true. I mean, I can see Dark Samus, she not only is the right size to appear, but she is also like one of the main villains of the series, being basically the main villain of the Prime series. Whether or not she returns in Prime 4, we don't know. She wasn't in Federation Force, but then that's more of a spin-off game. So
I'm not 100% sure on this. I haven't looked into this. But perhaps they're able to reuse assets from Samus as well to create the Dark Samus assist trophy.
Yeah, that could be possible. It could be a lot easier. I know that if you look at Takamaru's assist trophy, for example, his face and like his height and all that is pretty much lines up with Marth. So I wouldn't be surprised if they reuse Marth as a basis for that. Especially the face. It's like if you put them next to each other, it's really obvious. So if they did it for them, I wouldn't be surprised if they did it for Dark Samus and Samus as well.
Yeah, that's speculation because we haven't looked into that.
Yeah.
I just want to remind people that. But with going back to Dark Samus, you mentioned the silhouette being very similar, which I think is a very interesting or very important thing to consider because I remember when I translated the GDC slides, one of the things that were on the slides was that the silhouette of the character is very important. Sakurai pays very close attention to that when selecting characters and designing characters, making sure that the characters are recognizable from any stage, any distance of the camera and stuff like that. So I think that's something that is important to consider. But some of the clone characters have very similar silhouettes, and I think that Dark Samus would get in as a clone character, not as a character that started from the get-go. Yeah, no, clone character definitely. The argument, of course, against clone character is that Dark Samus, despite being literally a clone of Samus,
doesn't really fight like her. She has a lot of her own moves. She doesn't really use the charge beam or anything like that. She uses a lot of phase-on-based attacks. So it would feel kind of almost forced just to have Dark Samus in by making her be a clone. But and I think a lot of people won't like that. Especially you'll get a lot of people complaining because just like with Dark Pit, where Dark Pit could very feasibly have his own unique moveset, so could Dark Samus.
Yeah. Again, but I think like Dark Pit is one of those characters. I mean, obviously he was chosen as a costume.
Yeah.
But Dark Samus is one of those characters that would only get in, I think, as a clone character. Last minute edition.
Okay, so let's move on to the next one. This one is from a much smaller series, but one that's very close to people's hearts. He's a character who very frequently pops up in Smash speculation. Mainly, this again related to clones. And this character is the main villain of the F-Zero franchise, Black Shadow. So, Black Shadow is an interesting one because he's not really a relevant character. I mean, F-Zero, mainly because F-Zero hasn't had a game in a while, but he's not like one of the original F-Zero casts, and I think most people, to be honest, only really know him from him getting punched in the face by Captain Falcon in the anime.
Yeah.
But a lot of people really want him in Smash because they want him to take Ganondorf's moveset.
Yeah.
Because Black Shadow fits 100% more as a Captain Falcon clone than Ganondorf does. I mean, Ganondorf works with it, and Frost wrote a very good article that you can find on the site, and I'll link below, that explores why Ganondorf's moveset works for him in Smash. But it's undeniable that Ganondorf has a lot more to work from that could make him unique, whereas Black Shadow doesn't. And Black Shadow is just a big, muscly man dressed like a bull.
Yeah, but Black Shadow's speed on F-Zero is really fast.
That's true, yeah.
So, like, giving him a slow moveset doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, that's the one problem against it. And also, I mean, Black Shadow has a few unique things he does in the F-Zero GX story mode.
Yeah, there's a couple of other things.
Yeah.
That, I mean, that does make sense. I think like a lot of people do want to just transfer Ganondorf's moveset, and I kind of understand that feeling. Like, and you know, you don't feel that the character is being represented properly, but at the same time, that doesn't, like, Black Shadow doesn't deserve that.
Yeah, no, he deserves something better. He deserves something his own, not just a Ganondorf supplement.
And a lot of people are upset about Ganondorf's representation, but they forget that a lot of the things that they now think of about Ganondorf happened after Melee.
Yeah, that's true. Like, he doesn't, he never used a sword prior to Twilight Princess, or Wind Waker technically, but the Twilight Princess sword is the one everyone always wants. And in fact, it was the Space World demo. That's the reason why people think he wants a sword. But in actuality, in Ocarina of Time, he used spears, and Ganon always used spears. So, yeah. What do you think Black Shadow's chances are among F-Zero characters? Let's say that F-Zero gets another character.
I mean, it's either Black Shadow or Blood Falcon.
What about Samurai Goro?
Oh yeah, that's true.
Yeah. Like,
I mean, like, yeah. I mean, I really want a new F-Zero game.
Same. I think everyone does, or at least a HD port of GX. I'd settle with that for now. Just give us the AX. Let us access the AX mode. That's from the arcades, and then it's been long enough that I think a port will sell really well, and it's a very low effort thing. I
think Scott Waz recently mentioned that in his video.
Yeah, I think just seeing F-Zero in HD is good enough. Like, Fast Racing Neo is a beautiful game. If they can just do F-Zero in HD, I think that'll make a lot of people happy.
It still looks good. I was playing it a couple months ago, and it still looks gorgeous. F-Zero. Oh, F-Zero, yeah. GX. F-Zero GX.
Okay, well, let's move off of F-Zero to another big, muscly villain from a slightly smaller Nintendo franchise. But this time one that's much closer to Sakurai's heart. And this is the main villain of Kid Icarus Uprising, Hades. So, Hades instantly made himself a fan favourite by literally ripping through the credits sequence and revealing himself to be the main baddie, and spending the rest of the game throwing quips, making jokes, and bantering with Pit and Palutena and Viridi throughout the entire game. And I think his interactions throughout here has just made Hades an incredibly popular character. I know it's very well wanted that Palutena's guidance gets a Hades guidance equivalent, where Hades comes in and just throws shade at all the characters.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think there's a big debate between which villain of Kid Icarus should get the spotlight. Hades is obviously one of the more popular characters for the next one, because I think a lot of people want one of the villains to be the next Kid Icarus rep, if it even gets another rep. I think that depends on if it gets another game. But yeah, Hades being one that's so close to Sakurai, and also he's obviously the last boss, and you can make some movesets from that. I think we have a Dream Smashers for Hades on the site, and he has stuff like eye laser beams, and he's kind of, again, a bit like Ganondorf. He does a lot of physical attacks, and also a lot of dark magic. So again, he could even inherit Ganondorf's moveset, but I don't think he should, because he has far more going for him for an original moveset than Black Shadow does, for example.
The one issue I see with Hades, I see two issues really. The first issue is that, like you mentioned, he's an end boss. And I believe Sakurai, he's mentioned when he selects characters, he wants to pick characters that are players will be familiar with. And if you look at the villains in Smash Bros, which there aren't enough villains, but if you look at them, most of them are the reoccurring villains or the ones from very early on. And that's because there's a lot of players who just don't complete games.
Yeah,
and,
this is true.
So there's a lot of people who don't have no idea who Hades is.
Well, there's an argument to be slightly made against that, and that's that Hades is introduced in Chapter 9 of a 25-chapter game. He's introduced about a third through. And while you don't fight him or anything, he's a constant presence throughout. And I think that's one of the benefits of Kid Icarus. It's not just Pit and Palutena alone on the adventure. There are all the side characters are always butting in and making themselves known, even if you only fight them once and then they disappear. They're always cameoing, basically, in a bunch of levels.
And then the second issue was that you already mentioned, was that it really depends on if Kid Icarus gets another sequel.
Yeah, I think that's an issue that matters with any Kid Icarus character. Yeah. All right, so the next option on our list is this time from another Sakurai-made series, but this time not a character that he actually worked on himself. This is a new villain from Kirby to join the ranks of King Dedede and Meta Knight. A bit of I guess his morals are very questionable, but he's got quite popular, and it was either him or a color swap of him reappeared recently in a Kirby Team Clash Deluxe. But that's Magolor, the main villain of Kirby Return to Dreamland on the Wii. So Magolor he's an interesting one because, like you mentioned, Sakurai likes to consider characters who players will be familiar with, and Magolor is introduced right at the start of the game.
Yes.
But he's not introduced as a villain, he's introduced as an ally that Kirby has to assist with and help him build his ship back. It's only once Kirby has built that ship that it's then revealed that he's actually a villain. So it's this big bait and switch plot twist for a Kirby game. About as complicated as it gets.
Yeah, usually it just deals with stolen food.
Yeah, but Magolor is really popular. He's got quite a fan following in Japan.
Yes, he does.
I think a bit over here as well. I think when we did the Smash DLC poll in Japan, or you did all the research, Magolor placed fairly high, didn't he?
Yes. When it was perception of Smash DLC in Japan Redux, I believe he placed in the top 20.
Yeah.
I was quite surprised about how many people were posting about Magolor. Also, he still gets merchandise.
Oh yeah.
I buy merchandise for Nerbion, the resident Kirby lover, and I see Magolor stuff from time to time.
Yeah. Well, Magolor, he appears in a lot of promotional art, though HAL's very good at keeping its characters alive recently. Like they've been releasing loads of art on their Twitter account and stuff, and it includes characters from all throughout the series, both villains and heroes. And Magolor appears quite a lot. And like I said, in Kirby Team Clash Deluxe, which appeared last year, a green version of Magolor appeared in that game. Now, I've not actually played it, so I don't know whether or not it's meant to be him, or it's just someone from his species, or I don't know what the relevance of it is. But Magolor is, I feel like, I don't know if he's a bit like Marx was. He's the new kind of Marx, who was quite a popular villain from back in the Sakurai days of Kirby, and a powerful psychic villain who I think grows wings as well when his final boss happens. But I can easily see in the current HAL, Magolor being one of those characters who somehow comes back for a cameo, in the way that Galactonite and Daroch kept coming back after they were introduced.
Yeah.
Same for Susie, actually, from Planet Robobot. I mean, she survives the end of that game. So
I would say that the only thing that might hold Magolor back is if Waddle Dee gets in.
Yeah, that's true.
Waddle Dee, I think, is more popular than Magolor in terms of Kirby characters, but then you have the issue is will Sakurai treat him as a enemy character, as a low level character where that doesn't have a moveset kind of thing. Yeah,
it does. Yeah, does Sakurai view Waddle Dee as a mob character?
Yeah,
like a Goomba, or does he treat him like his own playable character, like the Bandana Dee has been in recent years?
It like the Goombas have appeared as enemies in adventure mode, but the Waddle Dees never appeared. I mean, Kirby didn't really have a full adventure mode.
Well, I mean, in Smash Run, the Waddle Dees are enemies.
Oh, that's a good point.
And King Dedede obviously threw them in Brawl.
Yeah.
As part of his moveset.
Maybe Magolor would have a better shot than Waddle Dee.
Yeah. It depends, I feel like with Smash 4, because at the beginning of development, King Dedede still threw Waddle Dees, and they changed it when they realised it wouldn't work on the DS. And I wonder if that's obviously a big reason for why Bandana Dee wasn't considered, in a similar way that Toad might not be getting in simply because he's part of Peach's moveset.
Yeah, I mean, that's a whole big discussion by itself. Like, is Captain Toad separate enough from Toad, or is Waddle Dee separate enough from Bandana Dee?
Yeah. Okay, well, let's move on to number 5. And going back to a series we've already talked about, this is another Kid Icarus villain. Yep. This time, the more recurring villain, the main villain of the first game, rival to Palutena, and the original villain of Kid Icarus Uprising before Hades steals the show. This is Medusa. And I want to start off the bat by explaining why I think Medusa got higher than Hades did. Okay. And the main reason for that is because she is there are a few reasons, but she's the OG villain. She is the villain of the first game. The whole plot revolves around her taking over. The backstory of Kid Icarus is the conflict between Palutena and Medusa. And Medusa being made ugly by Palutena and then coming back for revenge. And Pit gains his hero status by beating Medusa. And while she's not in the second Kid Icarus game, but to be honest, there isn't much content from the second game that's ever come back, she is the original villain of Kid Icarus and appears in the very first level of Kid Icarus Uprising. And all the promotional material. So like you were saying earlier, Push, that Sakurai likes to include characters that from early in the game that any fan would have, any player would have seen. Medusa is literally the very first level. Pit flies out and Medusa appears. So anyone who has played a Kid Icarus game will see Medusa.
Yeah.
And these factors make her more relevant. And this relationship with the characters is stronger than it is with Hades. The only thing that Hades has over her, apart from some would argue a better personality, is that Hades is the main villain of Uprising. And as plot points revealed in Uprising, is also the mastermind behind her attack in the first game. Which makes Hades the main villain of the whole series and Medusa more of the secondary villain.
Yeah, kind of like a pawn of Hades.
Yes, and so the argument is whether or not, as his role as main villain, he deserves it more than Medusa. I would personally want Medusa over Hades because I think that Hades is just a big, tough guy, whereas Medusa is much more interesting and has a much more unique moveset potential as well.
Yeah. Personally, I would say that I would go with Medusa just because she has a little bit more history, and as you mentioned that she's been a little bit more heavily promoted. I think that's important to consider.
Yeah. So, I think that I think personally, I know a lot of people think 3D, but I think Medusa is the next obvious choice from Kid Icarus.
If Kid Icarus
gets another character, yeah. But I think like a lot of people like Viridi. She's quite popular. She got a
she got the Mii costume.
But Medusa is much more important. And I think going from main character, partner, player to secondary character, and then villain, is more of a trend than for main character, partner, a secondary character, and so on.
I think Viridi got pretty high on the Smash DLC ballot that I did.
Yeah, no, she's popular. That's the one thing Viridi has over both Medusa and Hades, is that she's by far more popular. And it's part of I think it's because she kind of takes over Palutena's role at points, and has a good back and forth, good chemistry with Pit and Dark Pit, in fact.
Yeah.
All right. So moving on to number 4, we're going again back to another series we've already talked about. This is going to keep happening for the next few. We have another villain from Metroid Prime, and this one is much more unique, is highly requested, and is in the realm of being very relevant again. This is the bounty hunter Silex. So Silex is an interesting character in that he was introduced with a lot of other bounty hunters back in Metroid Prime Hunters, which is arguably a spin-off game, which those factors alone would have made him irrelevant. But the producer, Tanabe, and the team on Metroid Prime have gone on record many times to say that Silex is the hunter that they want to promote as Samus's rival. And that if they were going to make a Metroid Prime 4, Silex would be the main villain of it. And with Metroid Prime 4 on the horizon, and the tease of Silex at the end of Federation Force, where he steals the baby Metroid, Silex is 100% confirmed to be making a return and having a focus. And unlike Dark Samus, he has a unique moveset, a unique silhouette. Well, Dark Samus is a unique move, but he has a unique silhouette. He's different enough from Samus that they won't clash. Yep. He's the right size, so he beats out other Metroid characters. Silex is popular because of the fact that he's basically so obscure, but is still pushed on throughout the years.
I think the developers really pushing Silex in the next Metroid Prime game will be a huge factor in his consideration if he gets in.
Yeah. I think for me the only thing getting in the way of Silex making it into the next game, because I'm pretty sure Sakurai is very aware that people want more Metroid characters.
Yeah,
is that timing element of it. If, for example, the next Smash game, they made the project plan in E3 2016. Let's just throw that as an example out there. Then Metroid Prime 4 hadn't started development yet. Federation Force was the next game coming out, and Silex isn't in that until the very, very last scene. And even then, it's not 100% sure it was him until the developers actually came out and said it was. Sakurai, looking at this, would have no reason to think that Silex is relevant at this moment in time.
Yeah, but I'm sure he would, Sakurai is, if he's working on the next Smash, he's talking with the other people at Nintendo and seeing what their thoughts are. Oh no,
that's true, but back in E3 2016 time, I don't even know if Metroid Prime 4 was... I'm sure it's something Tanabe wanted, but they didn't have a team, they hadn't started yet, so there's no guarantee that it's coming up. Whereas, say Sakurai made up the thing in E3 2017, after Metroid Prime 4 got announced, then if he's talking to Tanabe, or Tanabe's like, oh yeah, Silex is going to be appearing in the next game, then this could be seen as a good opportunity to do it. Because either Smash would come out before Metroid Prime 4, just before, and Silex could help promote that game, or it would come out afterwards and he'd be very relevant. But that's the only thing I see with it coming in. I mean, Silex might last longer than Metroid Prime 4. I feel like they're setting him up to be Samus's ongoing rival in the way that Dark Samus was for a time. And if that is the case, then I think it's just a matter of time before Silex would get into a Smash game.
Yeah, like you said, people really want a new Metroid character. And unfortunately, the one that a lot of people want, Sakurai has a lot of reservations about bringing him in.
Yeah, unfortunately. Well, I just thought if a new Smash game came out and Silex wasn't in it, but then they did DLC like they did before, Silex would make a very good Corrin slot character. Because Metroid Prime 4 would likely come out afterwards, and it'd be enough time afterwards that they'd be like, okay, well, this is a good game we can promote now with Silex.
It depends on exactly when Metroid Prime is coming out, and when Smash would be coming out.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, there are a lot of factors, and I think that's Silex's issue. There are a lot of factors that could prevent him from getting in, a lot of factors that could push him into getting in. It's all about timing.
Yeah, but because of that, it's kind of hard to speculate properly. Like, there's a lot of guesses.
Yeah. Okay, on to number 3. Now, we're in the top 3, and for that we have top 3 villains from their games, main villains. And this one is from the Zelda series. We talked earlier about Ganondorf and how a lot of people wish he had a more unique moveset, but Sakurai has reservations about doing that because fans of Smash are already so used to his moveset it might be too much of a change. Yep. However, the Dark Beast Ganon is a different story. He is essentially his own character, this big pig man. And while Ganon's had very different appearances throughout, sometimes he's giant, sometimes he's much more pig-like. I think his appearances in the classic series of A Link Between Worlds, A Link to the Past, Zelda 1, he's much more Bowser-like. He's more of a cartoonish pig with a big staff and magic attacks. And I think there are a lot of fans out there who are like, well, we have 2 Zeldas, we have like 3 Links, why don't we get another Ganon?
Yeah.
And I'm one of them, to be honest. I think Pig Ganon could be a very good thing. I don't think the issue of him being too big is there, because, like a lot of people point out, Bowser fluctuates in size. And unlike Ridley, Ganon can be shrunk down while still keeping his form. Yeah. Because he's a big, pudgy character, it's easy to scale him, whereas Ridley is, obviously very thin and stuff, and small, making him smaller might become too difficult.
I think with Ganon, I think he would be able to represent a subset of Zelda games that aren't really well represented with the current characters, and that's, as you mentioned, the 2D games.
Yeah.
So I think like having the classic games, I think having him would be a throwback character, but also a character that is still relevant to the series.
Yes. And I think he can do something pretty unique in that he's a heavy character, but a lot of the heavy characters in the game are very physical focused, very close range. Bowser, King Dedede, Donkey Kong. Whereas Ganon's much more of his staff has a long reach. His spear, and he has magic. So Ganon could make for a very good heavy character with ranged attacks. A character where it's much more about dodging his projectiles and his long reach in order to get in and knock him out.
Yeah.
And I think that could be a unique enough idea that makes him worth putting in.
It'd be a little bit difficult to balance him.
Yeah, that's the only issue, because it kind of goes against the balancing idea, but we've kind of seen that before. I mean, Rosalina is a big character with a big hitbox who gets knocked back really easily because she's so light, which goes against the big characters, the tough, slow ones. And Mewtwo also had that to an extent. He's also he's a slow, heavier character, but he's actually light and gets knocked back really easily.
Glass cannon.
Yeah. So it's not like they haven't done these kind of things before, so I think they could do it for Ganon. Okay, but we talked about Ridley a few times on It Into Doing before, but he's actually our number 2 spot on this list. And I think this one's much more of really does deserve to be in Smash. It's the only thing that gets in his way is his design size. I don't know. Ridley is like one of the main Nintendo villains. And he's very popular, and he has a moveset. Like, literally, he ticks all the boxes. It is just, he's really hard to implement. He's too big, and like I said, if you try and shrink him, you'd have to mess around with some things. He can also fly, and that's part of him. It's not like you can just remove his ability to fly and be like, oh yeah, this is fine now. And there are some good mods for Ridley out there, but none of them look balanced whatsoever.
Yeah.
None of them are like... He's still really big in those mods as well. Like, I know they've tried to shrink him as much as they could, but it still makes him like...
Yeah.
1.5 times
funny.
bigger than any other character in the game.
And then if you shrink him down even more, he looks funny.
Yeah. So I think that the big thing that needs Ridley to get, and I think a lot of people have thrown this around, is a redesign in the Metroid series itself.
Yes,
I've
argued that.
That would work better in Smash. I almost think that, and I'm sure plenty of people will be disgusted at this, if he appeared in Metroid Prime Federation Forces and was much more chibi in design, whether that would have a better chance of him getting in. But I know a chibi Ridley isn't something that a lot of people would probably want.
Let's not piss off more Smash fans.
We should just have classic Ridley. He was chibi enough. Yeah, he has a weird face, but he's the right size. Comic. Yeah, the one from the comic is the one I mean. Ridley is still a popular choice, even among us, even though his chances are all dependent on Sakurai and design. And that leaves our number one spot. And we haven't mentioned him yet, so I think it's pretty obvious who it is. It is the main villain of the Donkey Kong series, and by far the most popular villain for getting in, King K. Rool.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what more can we really say about K. Rool at this point? I think both of us think he's actually has a really good chance of being in the next game, right?
Yep. I've argued that since the Smash DLC, that he wouldn't make sense as a DLC character, but as a base game character, I think that his chances would be really good, because then the people that are unfamiliar with him won't be buying into him. Like, he would just be part of the package.
Yeah, you buy for Mario, you get K. Rool.
Yeah, and even when they're promoting King K. Rool costume, the Mii costume, they said, blast from the past, this character is nostalgic, kind of like that. That's how they presented it. And so I think that's how they could kind of present him if he were to get in.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think the Mii fighter costume, I've said it quite a few times, is a clear indication that he did well in the ballot. Like, every Mii fighter costume, you can kind of pinpoint why they were chosen. They were either an assist trophy, a background element, they had a 3D model, they were part of a stage. But King K. Rool has none of this. Even his model that they used for the costume isn't the one that got used for the trophy, because the trophy is the modern design, and the costume is very clearly the classic throwback design.
Yeah, so I think even in the Smash DLC, the perception of Smash DLC in Japan, Redux, he did really well, even in Japan. So he crosses those boundaries. He's worldwide among Smash fans. He's like Geno.
Yeah,
Smash
like
fans
Geno.
want him.
And just like Ganon, while King K. Rool is quite big, I mean, the first Donkey Kong game, even 64, in fact, almost all of his appearances, he's like twice the size of Donkey Kong. Which is really big when you think about it. But he's also pudgy and cartoonish enough that you could easily shrink him down to Donkey Kong's size, and he'd still look like K. Rool.
Yeah.
So I don't think size is so much of an issue like it is with Ridley.
Yeah, I think his proportions work well.
So,
and then moveset-wise, I think he can pull a lot from the various Donkey Kong Country and 64 appearances. And, people would finally be happy with Donkey Kong representation in Smash.
Not everyone will be happy. There'll always be people asking for Dixie Kong, and then when she gets in, there'll be people asking for Cranky Kong, and it'll never end. But this is a good step in the right direction. And I think moveset-wise, the first two games, I think, are the main ones to go for. I'm very confident that if he gets in, he would have a Captain K. Rool costume. Because Sakurai likes to acknowledge the games that are clearly the fan favourites in a series, like with Mega Man and Mega Man 2. And Donkey Kong Country 2 is definitely that game. I mean, but I'm pretty sure, didn't Captain K. Rool have the trophy in Melee, but King K. Rool didn't?
Yep. Yeah, Captain K. Rool, I think.
Yeah. So you clearly, and they had to make that from scratch for
Yeah.
the game. So they chose that appearance because it's clearly the most popular one at the time. I'm sure it still is, but the royal king appearance is obviously the more well-known one. This is default, so I reckon they could have both and take movesets from those two games.
Definitely.
But okay, those were our top 10 picks for villains and why we think they were going to get in. So let us know what your thoughts are in the comments below. What you thought of our picks, whether you agree, disagree, if there were any villains that you think should have been on the list that we haven't included. And if you hadn't seen the original top 10, I suggest you go and watch it. And just to hear me throwing out all of the all the talks about all these villains and stuff, hear more of my voice. I'm sure you'll love it. And yeah, if you liked this, then please like and subscribe. And if you really want to help us even more, and even suggest articles, remember this was a Patreon requested video, then go hit up our Patreon. And you can, just $1 is enough to help us, but obviously if you want to do more, I'm not going to complain, I mean. But yeah.
With $1 you can get access to special previews of translations that we're working on, or articles or videos. And then with more bigger donations, we have bigger incentives.
Yeah, so check it out. And with that, always remember to return to the source.